Morning, y'all. Today we are going to start with content. Try to get this a little bit more steady for y'all so it's not jumping around. So what we're going to do is start going over some geography stuff, doing the intro, talking about the 5 themes of geography. Sorry here, let's get this stuff out of the way. Yeah, so we're going to start with the 5 themes of geography, just kind of an overview of them, and then we'll probably start talking about location a little bit. These are just the general ideas. We won't be covering everything about these topics yet. That'll be further down the road. So, with no further ado, let's watch the PowerPoint. I'll talk over it, and you all will learn so much. All right. Go to the top. So, the 5 themes of geography. This is a human geography class, so we'll be talking more about the human side of things and less about like the geological side of things, basically. This is not geology. So, what are the 7 continents? So you guys should know this by now. This is super important knowledge to have about the world. Africa, Antarctica, Asia, Australia, Europe, North America, and South America. 7 continents with 4 oceans, the Arctic, the Atlantic, the Indian, and the Pacific. Only 2 of those oceans are touching the United States. Why do we study geography? It affects where people live. It is where people live. It affects how people, it affects how people live. Where they're at changes where the way people live. If you live in the desert, you're going to have a different lifestyle than someone who lives in the mountains or someone who lives in a jungle. It affects the outcomes of major events. Like for example, a major event that has to do with geography that's been happening lately is COVID. The COVID outbreak is something geographers would study. The spread of viruses, the spread of sicknesses, the movement of people all around the globe who have the sickness is all under the field of geography. Let's get rid of this. So it would be geographers as well as medical doctors that would be studying COVID. Geographers will study it as well. So what are the 5 themes? Location, which is like your place on the planet. Movement, how people move around, and items move, objects move, trade goods and such. Region, where you live at, whether it be Southeast Asia, whether it be the what's another example? Like the Midwest is a region. Regions are places with different dialects and things like that. Place. A place would be, something like Minnesota is a place. The United States is a place. And then human environment interaction, which is how humans change their environment, like building buildings, putting air conditioning in buildings. That's the way we interact with our environment, any of that kind of stuff. So pretty much anything that involves human activity is covered by these 5 themes. Theme number 1, what we'll talk about is location. Where is it? It being whatever you're talking about, whatever you're looking for, whatever this object of study is. So there are 2 types of location. There's absolute location and there's relative location. Absolute location would be I am at my house, and it has an address. But I'm not going to say. But the address to my house would be the absolute location. And then my neighbor's house across the street would be a relative location because it's only across the street relative to me. It is across many streets relative to where you're at, I imagine. So that's what relative place is. It's relative to where you're at or where you're measuring. Where absolute is the same spot no matter who looks at the information. Okay, so next is absolute location. We're going to talk about that a little bit more. How is it found? Like, how do you know the absolute location of the place? And that's what we're going to be talking about mostly for the rest of this video. I'm trying to keep stuff short for you guys and not give you too much work. I don't want to overload you. So, two specific line types that are used to find absolute location are latitude and longitude. Longitude are these ones that go up and down. Latitude goes side to side. I always remember that because the rungs of a ladder go side to side. And latitude, ladder, side to side. Okay, if that helps you at all. So here's a nice little drawing I made. Absolute location, latitude lines. They're also known as parallels. That's an older term for them. We won't be calling them parallels, but if you see, oh shoot, oh, I didn't realize I could do this. In any case, latitude lines are sometimes called parallels. We won't be calling them that, but that's just something you ought to know. So right here, latitude is these ones that go side to side. Another one, latitude, 20 degrees, 0 degrees. So that's the equator. Latitude are drawn from east to west, side to side, like the ladder. So the lines are drawn from east to west. And then they measure the distance from north to south. And the way they do that is because this line and this line are 20 degrees separation. Every line is 20 degrees. Or they get bigger as they go, so scratch that. Not every line's 20 degrees. So essentially, you start at the equator, which is 0 degrees, and then you go up to the other line, which would be 20 degrees, and everything in between those two is measured as latitude line from 1 to 20 degrees. And that goes north and south, as you can see. So the latitude lines are drawn from east to west, and they measure north to south. It's a little bit backwards. Just think of it backwards that way. The major line of latitude is the equator. This green line right here, which I will highlight because I think the highlight tool is pretty cool. Oop, oop, oop. Well, pretty bad job highlighting it, but whatever. You all know what I'm trying to do. So it's the green line. That is the equator. It splits the Earth into the northern hemisphere, which is where we live here in the United States, and then the southern hemisphere, which I wish I could get rid of this stupid thing, but I can't. So we'll do Africa. Whoopsies, I messed up that top line. Pretend that it's just this bit. I'm going to stop using the highlight tool. I can't draw good enough. But anyways, this is the southern hemisphere. Oh, so it's only this bit. The rest of that's in the northern hemisphere. As you can see, there's much more land in the northern hemisphere than there is in the southern hemisphere. Not too much land beneath the equator. So what is a hemisphere? A hemisphere is a half of a globe, any circle. So a baseball would have a top hemisphere and a bottom hemisphere. In our case, we're discussing the Earth because it's human geography. So This would be the southern equator, and the top one would be the northern equator. Generally is how we, the northern hemisphere, sorry, god damn it. I didn't mean equator. So the northern hemisphere, southern hemisphere. All right, now we're going to talk about longitude lines. These are the opposite of latitude lines. They call them meridians as well. Kind of confusing. I wish they didn't call them meridians as well, but that was the old way, and then they switched it to longitude and latitude. So it's no longer parallels and meridians. So longitude lines go up and down. They go from north to south. So they go north to south, and they measure east to west. They're the opposite of latitude. Latitude goes east to west and then measures from north to south. So the reason that is because these lines go up and down, as you see. So if you were going to go from 0 degrees right here, and you wanted to go to 20 degrees right there, everywhere in between these two spaces, which is what I'm highlighting right here, all that is from 1 to 20 degrees. And as you can tell, when I move the mouse, it's measuring it from east to west. That's how the lines would go. So when you have the longitude lines like this going up and down, and then you have the latitude lines going east to west, you get a nice little grid. And you can use those lines to find points within inside, which is what we will do a couple exercises doing that. So that's longitude, up, down, and they measure east-west, north-south, east-west. So the major line of longitude is the prime meridian, and that one goes right down England. The Greenwich, England is the 0 degree mark, and that is because the English were the ones who invented this system, and so they wanted to put themselves in the middle. So oopsies, I went back a slide. So as you can see, with my little highlighter, this green line is the prime meridian. And when you break off from that line and go either direction, that's when you start going 20 degrees, 40 degrees, 60 degrees, 80 degrees, 100, 120, 40, 60, blah, blah, blah. So each way you go from each side, that's what it measures. And as you know, hemispheres are now, they're halves of a globe. So you can have a north half, a south half, and obviously an eastern and a western half. So as you obviously, I assume you would be able to tell, is that this is the western hemisphere because it is in the west side, and this is the eastern hemisphere. It's on the east side. That's where the division largely comes from when you hear the east referring to, Russia, China, India, the Middle East, these little countries down here as well, Southeast Asia. And then when we talk about the West, we're usually referencing the United States, Western Europe, which is actually east of the prime meridian, but don't let them know that. The South America. So we are in the Western Hemisphere. Oh man, these guys are just talking too much. So absolute location. Can you find absolute location? Well, as you guys know, we got north, east, southwest. Never eat sour Wheaties. Never eat sour Wheaties. That's how I remember. North, east, southwest. Never eat sour Wheaties. When you say eat, it should be on your right side. When you say Wheaties, it should be on your left side. So use longitude. We're not going to try the worksheet, so just ignore that slide. So here you can see is a globe. The north, the west, the south, and the east. So if I were going to find a spot in the world that we're 30 degrees north. Oh, that would be latitude because it's north and it's measuring north. So that's 30 degrees north. That's about the best I could do. Whoops, there we go. It's hard to do with this little finger pad. I probably should grab a mouse. So that's 30 degrees north from 0, 1530. Now I need to find 15 degrees west. So you got to start at 0, the prime meridian. Since we're measuring east to west, you go by the longitude lines or the meridians. So 15 degrees west, well, there's two 15 degrees. There's 15 degrees here and there's 15 degrees here. So if I were looking for 15 degrees west, then I would go to the west side of the measurement. If this said 15 degrees east, then there's an E instead of a W, I would go to this 15 degree mark and then I would look up. So I've got 30 degrees north, which is right there, and then 15 degrees west. That's why point 1 is right there. So 15 degrees west is this line. And the way that we figure that out is you go to 15 degrees west, where it intersects with 30 degrees north is where you would make your mark. And that would be the absolute location of point 1. And point 2, we got 45 degrees south. So as you can see, there's 45 degrees here and 45 degrees here. You want to go to the southern measurement since that's what it says right here. 45 degrees east, which would be on this side. You got east and south, which means it would be in this grid. And lo and behold, it is in this grid. That's point 2, 45 and 45. 45 and 45. That is the absolute location of point 2. So that's absolute location. Relative location. Where an area is depending on where another area is. Like I said earlier, the house across the street from me is relative. That location is relative to my position. If you were trying to get that location of the house from me saying the house across the street would only do you any good if you knew where my house was. If you don't know where I live and then I say it's across the street, you would say relative to what? Relative to which location? And that would have to be my house, which if I told you the address, then you could find the house across the street. Obviously, you can't figure out where the teacher's desk is because we're not in class. So that one doesn't really work, that exercise. So I'm going to make just a quick little questionnaire about latitude and longitude, and we'll maybe do a little exercise, and then we'll call that good, and we'll pick up with theme number 2, movement, when we get started next. And thank you all, and have a good day.